Definitions of culture include things like religion, customs, language, attitude, values, things like this. Some of these things, like opposing religious beliefs or values, are contrary to the Gospels. Those shouldn't be celebrated and included in a church. So why say that we want to be a church of all cultures instead of saying we want to be a church of all peoples or races or ethnic groups?
Yeah, there's some really good stuff in this question. And here's the reality. At some point and at some level, the gospel will confront, contradict, and correct every single culture. That is absolutely true. When we say that we want to be a church of all cultures, it doesn't mean that we want to be a church, a collection of fully devoted followers of Jesus who also embrace Muslim culture or Mormon culture or cultural values and practices that would ultimately be dishonoring to Jesus. It doesn't. Okay, we live in Southeast Minnesota. So many people have said, Rick, you got to understand Minnesota nice. And lifelong Minnesotans have said, Rick, one of the things you have to understand is that Minnesota nice is not merely nice, although it includes that. Yeah. It includes. I've heard about the Minnesota goodbye, and I've experienced
the long one.
and I've experienced that. That's fun. But Minnesota nice also includes. And this is what I've been told. I've experienced it a little bit, but I've been told by Minnesotans, it also includes passive aggressiveness.
Sure.
Well, we don't want to celebrate and include passive aggressiveness in our church. So we want people who are raised lifelong in Southeast Minnesota to come and bring Minnesota nice culture, but also say, because I'm a follower of Christ, I'm going to let go or turn away from some of the less than savory aspects of my culture. Every single person has a responsibility to do that. One of the things that I find fascinating about John's account of what he experienced with Christ in the book of Revelation, when he saw what was going on in heaven, when he saw what was happening, I think for him was in the future, and for maybe it was current. Sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what's going on there, but certainly it's something we will experience when we're in heaven, is that you see all kinds of people from all languages, all kinds of cultural backgrounds, worshiping around the throne in unison. And it's not merely the presence of different races. It was obvious. Right. And some of the cultural distinctiveness was obvious, even in heaven. Yeah. So in the heart and the mind of God, that must be a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a little, perhaps, esoteric. Will you bear with me for a second?
You got it.
All right. You can fast forward through this or skip to the next video if you want. It's not simply that we're trying to cultivate a gospel culture. The gospel culture always exists and is always expressed inside of the context of a larger culture, right? So think about this plant. I don't even know if this is real. Nope, it's fake. All right. So let's let this plant be gospel culture, and the soil, this is not a perfect illustration, is the larger cultural context.
Okay.
Right? So the gospel is always expressed. I'm always expressing the gospel through my kind of American culture, right? Through the language, through the colloquialisms that I use, through the way that I dress. Rick, how do you express the gospel through the way that you dress? Number one, I just try to be modest. Mm-hmm. I try to be respectful. But, I don't want to dress in a way that's offensive to somebody else, and that's ultimately rooted in my understanding of the gospel. And it's one of the reasons that Paul said, whatever you do, whether you eat or drink, do it for the glory of God. Whatever you do,
it's all infused.
Wherever you go in the world, wherever you meet Christians, you will find that the gospel connects you and unites you in deep and meaningful, transcendent, powerful ways. And yet, when you meet other Christians, their understanding of the gospel is always expressed through the larger cultural context in which they were raised. At our church, we don't simply want people of all different kinds of races and ethnic backgrounds to come. We want people to come and bring their full selves. And so if you came from Somali culture, we don't want you to have to completely conform to majority culture and keep some of your just cherished cultural upbringing suppressed or leave it at home. No, we want you to bring your full self.
And those aren't mutually exclusive.
No, they're not mutual. Yeah, that's right. And so you're gonna see more and more from time to time. We're gonna sing songs that represent other people's heart language. We're gonna do things that we're gonna do our best to serve, include, and celebrate aspects of culture that are good and Christ honoring. And we're always, and this is incumbent on all of us, to turn away from or to repent from anything that contradicts the values and the commands of Christ.
Beautiful.
And so we can't incorporate all aspects of all cultures, but we should be a place where no one has to suppress their culture when they come. And the gospel can be expressed through that larger cultural context. Again, that might sound a little bit nerdy, but I don't just want white people here. I want white people expressing the gospel through their culture. I don't just want African Americans here. I want African Americans expressing the gospel through their culture. I don't just want Europeans and Canadians and Latinos just here trying to act kind of the way that I act.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to express the gospel through their appropriate cultural expressions too. I mean, that's what we want for all of us.
Rick, would it be fair to say that we might see a change in the way that worship services are done? Are you going to see a difference? Because we're looking at all cultures and that these things are not mutually exclusive. And I can bring my culture, whatever that is, to church.
Yeah, I think one of the best examples happened before I got here. And Pastor Jamie has been celebrated appropriately for, he did a phenomenal job in the Easter service, the Easter before I got to come and be a part of the Autumn Ridge family.
That was beautiful.
And it's not like every service every Sunday is going to look like that, but we look for opportunities where we can communicate to people. You don't have to be like my culture to come and be included in our culture.
Right.
And that's a bit of a challenge. It's lofty, it's aspirational. That's what I want for us. Right? And so, I mean, we're always going to look like a church that exists in America at this time, right? We're always going to look like a predominantly Western culture, and there are great things about Western culture, and then there are things about Western culture that need to be submitted to the feet of Jesus. There are great things about Eastern culture. There are things about Eastern culture that need to be submitted to the feet of Jesus. We could do that with every single culture, but we want to be a place where people can bring their full selves, right?
Love it.
Okay.
Love it.